Democrats in Washington have told you have a patriotic duty to hate Vladimir Putin. So why does permanent Washington hate him so much? If you've been watching the news, you know that Putin is having a border dispute with a nation called Ukraine. Now, the main thing to know about Ukraine for our purposes is that its leaders once sent millions of dollars to Joe Biden's family. Not surprisingly, Ukraine is now one of Biden's favorite countries.
Trump relied on Russian money long before he ran for president. In 2008, his son Donald Trump Jr. said money was pouring in from Russia for Trump properties. The same year, a Russian oligarch paid Trump $95 million for a Florida mansion Trump bought in 2004 for less than half that price. Showcasing a family golf course in 2013, Eric Trump told a journalist that Russian sources provided financing that American banks would not. Later, Donald Trump took his Miss Universe pageant to Moscow.
You have a special announcement where the Miss Universe pageant will be held this year. Go ahead.
Are you ready? The Miss Universe pageant will be held at Crocus City Hall in Moscow, Russia.
And he openly courted Russian President Vladimir Putin.
Biden has pledged to defend Ukraine's borders even as he opens our borders to the world. That's how it works. Invading America is called equity. Invading Ukraine is a war crime.
Immigration and crime levels have had inverse trajectories since the 1990s. Some experts say the influx of immigrants actually contributed to a decrease in crime rates. An analysis of 2010 census data shows that 1.6% of immigrant males between 18 to 39 years old were incarcerated, compared with 3.3% of native-born males. Using 2014 census data, the Cato Institute found that illegal immigrants were incarcerated at a rate of 0.85%, but this included immigration offenses. This range of studies shows there is no evidence immigrants commit more crimes than native-born Americans.
The administration assures us this has nothing at all to do with repaying Joe Biden's personal debts to Ukrainian oligarchs. Not at all. It's completely and totally unrelated. Cheering on any attacks made by Russia against our mortal enemy, our real enemy, ISIS. Why not just say that's great? I don't like Putin. I'm not living in Russia. I'm not taking money from the guy, but like a good deed is a good deed no matter who commits it. Why not just say that? The point here is to defend democracy. Not that Ukraine is a democracy. It is not a democracy. Ukraine's president has arrested his main political opponent. He has shut down newspapers and television stations that have dared to criticize him. So in American terms, you would call Ukraine a tyranny. But Joe Biden likes Ukraine, so Putin bad, war good. Not that Ukraine is a democracy. It is not a democracy. Ukraine's president has arrested his main political opponent.
Alexei Navalny, one of Putin's biggest critics and the main opposition leader in Russia, was detained today and sentenced, I believe. Can you kind of go into what he's facing right now?
He was poisoned with a military-grade chemical agent called Novichok. He almost lost his life. He was airlifted from central Russia to Germany, and he was in a coma when the Russian authorities said that he broke his probation because he hadn't called where he was. He was in a coma after suffering at the hands of the regime from a chemical agent. So it was very farcical.
He has shut down newspapers and television stations that have dared to criticize him.
The Kremlin today blocked Facebook and Twitter, and there are no independent media outlets left.
No to war was the final message broadcast by TV Rain, one of Russia's last independent media outlets. A similar scene played out at Russia's oldest liberal radio station, Echo of Moscow, which says it's been forced to close.
We just can say welcome to the USSR.
These acts of defiance come as Russia's parliament passed a law effectively criminalizing the spread of information opposing the Kremlin's narrative on the war against Ukraine. Simply calling it a war or an invasion instead of a special military operation can lead to up to 15 years behind bars. The Kremlin is trying to control discontent over the war. At least 8,000 protesters have been arrested.
So in American terms, you would call Ukraine a tyranny. But Joe Biden likes Ukraine, so Putin bad, war good. Okay, so we cannot in any way do business or make common cause with a country whose leader is, quote, evil, who is, quote, a bad person. That takes most of the world off the table. Most countries are run by really bad people. Why not just accept that people who are bad people share our interests and side with them? In a world full of threats, you create a hierarchy of them. You decide which is the worst, and then you go down the list. And my only question to you is
right up there. In the isolated incident, if we're to talk about all of history accounted for, then every group ever bad. Right? The Russia thing isn't a problem to me just because I think risking World War III over Eastern Ukraine is worth it. It's because if you believe that Russia won't stop, that Russia has no intention of stopping. And again, like, I feel like the evidence really weighs in favor of that, given the fact that they've engaged in a number of proxy wars, that they fund, you know, disinfo campaigns, that they promote territories they've acquired, at least like 4 of them since the fall of the Soviet Union, and that they keep doing so with the thinnest justification on countries that have no chance whatsoever at invading Russia or meaningfully attacking them or threatening them in any way. I feel like the evidence is stacked very much in favor of them being the aggressor. And maybe like you let them have East Ukraine or whatever, as I guess horrible as that is, but if it keeps going, if it keeps happening, I asked you earlier what you would do if we did pull NATO back to its post-Cold War boundary and they just kept eating up countries. Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, they wouldn't have to do Belarus, of course, because of Lukashenko, Romania, Poland, Hungary. If they just kept doing this, you know, year after year, you hear about secessionist movements, about assassination attempts from radicals within their country. If it keeps ramping up and up and up, what do we do? It feels like we're forfeiting by stepping back. Your sincere isolationist tendencies are invoked alongside the justifications that Russia uses to be very much not isolationist. Because it's possible to be fully isolationist, but also to say, like, fuck Russia, fuck what they're doing, they're lying for excuse, you know, whatever, fuck them, something needs to be done, but I'm not doing it. That's a thing an isolationist can say. But you're saying I'm an isolationist and also holding water for, I think, a lot of ideas that are favorable to their edge in this geopolitical conflict, which leads me to wonder, is the isolationism just is the belief that Russia has its excuses and we should pull back a way of feeding the isolationism, or is the isolationism a way of feeding the positions that seem to geopolitically favor Russia?